to be here. We know getting around downtown LA is not always pleasant, but that's one of the reasons we're here. Is our screen working?
There we are.
Our screen isn't working, so oh well. All right. Catherine, can you push the sound off or pause that? I think that's what I'm hearing.
I just want to thank you for your help.
Hello everyone, my name is Caroline Cicero. I'm a professor in gerontology here at USC. Welcome to our age-friendly Los Angeles Wicked Problems Practicum. If you're wondering what that means, you'll be hearing in a few minutes. As I said, feel free to get up and get food and drink as you want. Our night consists of a few different segments, and so you'll have a chance to hear from a lot of us and get some different perspectives on what we've been doing. This night actually started 2 years ago when Dr. Jennifer Swift and I met in this room. We both were attending the Homeless Summit. Homelessness is also a wicked problem that USC is confronting. So we met in the Homeless Summit and we started talking about how to work with her realm, which is spatial sciences and mapping, and my realm, which is lifespan, health, and aging. Specifically 1 year ago, we answered a request for proposals from the USC Provost to put together a practicum that would combine 3 or more schools or academic units on campus. And so because gerontology and USC is a committed partner in the Los Angeles Purposeful Aging, Age-Friendly Los Angeles initiative, we decided that it would be great to get students involved in that process. So I'd like to thank the USC Provost for support. And tonight we'll be hearing from Roberto Suro, who will be telling us about the Wicked Problems Practicums in general. For the last 6 months, we've had gerontology, public health, public policy, and spatial sciences students working on the issue of aging in Los Angeles and how we can maximize health and lifespan in our urban environment. Our students have been walking the streets of Little Tokyo, Long Beach, Cudahy, West Los Angeles, Glendale, many, many different neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and they've been figuring out how to portray what they found in digital imagery and with maps and web design. And you'll have a chance to see some of the websites and apps we created a little bit later in the evening. Later in our program, Jennifer Swift will tell us how our interdisciplinary teams collaborated, because getting computer geeks to work with people who like to work with aging grandmas isn't always the easiest thing to do. We had public health working with public policy, and so not only did 6 professors have to work out how to work together, but we had students from all over the city, all over the world even, working together. So we'll tell you some of how that worked, and you'll get to see the products we designed. Also, you'll hear from Laura Trejo, our esteemed guest, General Manager of the City of LA Department of Aging. And she's going to talk to us about the Purposeful Aging Initiative. And she's also going to interview 3 of our students on how their collaboration worked. Thank you, Laura, for your support. Thank you for being here. And Laura is a faithful Trojan. I believe you have, 3 degrees from USC, as do I. So I shouldn't say 3, I should say right on. Also, I see many familiar faces in the audience. Many of you were at our Geo Design Charrette back in September. Thanks to all of our participants. We listed you on the back of our program. I apologize if I left anyone out of all my thank yous. I tried to remember everyone, and I'm sure I left someone out, so I apologize. We'll also be hearing from Dr. Tridib Banerjee and Dr. Annie Wynn about what our charrette was and how that worked. So again, I would also like to thank the leadership of our 4 academic units, Maria Henke at USC Gerontology, as well as our public policy leadership, Keck School of Medicine Public Health, and Dornsife Spatial Sciences Institute. All schools contributed so much to making this night possible. So generous funding from our Provost's office allows us to hold this event here in the town and gown. And we'd like to thank the Provost, and now I would like to introduce Roberto Suro, who is a professor in journalism at the Annenberg School, as well as a professor at the Saul Price School of Public Policy. He's the director of the Tomas Rivera Institute, is it? Yes, Policy Institute, part of the Price Center for Social Innovation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Roberto. Come on up. Thank you. We'll tell you more about our programs.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for being here, and thanks to everybody from the various schools, the students, faculty, staff, and outside partners who've made this possible. What we're seeing here today is the fruition of what it was seeming a somewhat unlikely idea when it was first hatched. And this project really has proved that something very unlikely and ambitious can be accomplished, and can be accomplished extremely well when dedicated individuals put themselves to it. The original idea of these practicums was to accomplish a few different objectives in USC's strategic plans. One is to promote interdisciplinary study, and particularly to bring professional students together from very different disciplines to do curriculum-based work, to study together, and to undertake an extended project over the course of at least an entire semester, if not even longer. The other objective was to address one of the wicked problems that the school has undertaken as a thematic and issue that it wants to address. And the third was to undertake work that addressed real-world problems with partners outside the university in a specific effort to address not abstract or theoretical problems, but the problems faced by practitioners, by advocates, by public agencies around a specific significant issue. And to do all three of these things at once. So bring together at least 3 different schools doing curriculum-based work, addressing a wicked problem in the course of a partnership and collaborations with public agencies and nonprofit groups around the city. We did a pilot version of this in the last academic year that focused on issues related to homelessness by people who are recently released from prisons and jails. So the interaction of incarceration and homelessness, and particularly that very difficult moment when people are recently released from prison. And it was kind of a proof of concept effort. Nothing quite as grand or as ambitious as this effort has been, which really has brought this idea to fruition. It's given life to the project. We're going to issue an RFP shortly for see who else is crazy enough to undertake this work and a project like this next year, and hope that there will be entrants from around campus. There's no shortage of wicked problems, and there's no shortage of people in our community who are anxious to address these problems, and there's certainly no shortage of students who are eager to work with students in other disciplines on these sorts of issues. So thank you all for we're here tonight. Thank you all who made this possible. Looking very much forward to learning about all the work that's been done in the last few months. Good evening. Thank you.
All right, Vincent, can we play our video? At least on that screen. So wicked problems, of course, include technology. Everything is supposed to work with Wi-Fi these days, and I don't think it does. All right, we have a video directed and produced by Heidi Ritage, one of our Practicum students, who's also a filmmaker. There you go. Sorry, it's not over here. I don't know if we can bring the lights down, it's just 90 seconds. That's possible. This is gonna play. Dr. Tridib Banerjee, who will tell you a little bit about the intentions of our charrette and what a charrette is that we held in September.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good evening. I'm Tridib Banerjee from the School of Public Policy. So my task here is to explain what a charrette is. The charrette was the centerpiece of our various teaching innovations that we put together for this group. As you know, this is a multidisciplinary effort of 4 schools involving 6 faculty members, I think 5 degree programs. This is not a standard course, so it has to be started from scratch. So we have to scratch our head often to figure out how to make it work. So the one innovation I think we did, interpedagogic innovation, was this introducing the students to this phenomenon called the charrette, which also involved participation from the members of the community and the interest folks. Some of you here participated in that. So what is a charrette? Well, I think, my French isn't very good, but it means a cart or a carriage. Those of you who are the French expert might confirm that. And the term was en charrette, which was a tradition from l'École des Beaux-Arts in France, where what used to happen in the schools of architecture, or in the l'École des Beaux-Arts School of Architecture, at the end of the semester, when the architecture students would produce their studio projects, there was a deadline. And when the deadline will occur, this cart will be rolling by the corridor, and the students will be dumping the drawings on the cart, and some of them will be running along, still putting the north arrow, and little Frida forgot to put it on the scale, and so that became a kind of very well-known phenomenon in schools of architecture here and everywhere in the world, where charrette really refers to the kind of last-minute major effort. But the term has subsequently evolved into the concept of a group dynamic participatory event where you can bring a bunch of people from different interests, different expertise, and contribute to some common understanding and agreements and the themes about a problem and how the problems might be structured and solved in that manner. So in this case, we staged the charrette, I think it was end of September 27th or something like that. And we had several of you who participated in that with the students. We divided the room in several tables. There are maps all over the walls, and so the students were matched with the community participants who are professional experts who are representative of those particular areas that are shown, the 6 districts that we ultimately chose. And they put their head together for a good 3 or 4 hours. At the end of the mid-afternoon, they had a list of everything they wanted to be included in the study of this project. So that's how sort of it evolved, and it was, I think, very, very wonderful experience for the students to have that kind of direct communication for people who participated. And I think I have a blank page looking at me that means my time is out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Next we have Annie Wynn from the Keck School of Medicine. She's going to tell us about some of our results. And Vincent, we still don't have these screens? No? Okay, so sorry. If you would like to see, she has a few slides with some results. Oh, can you advance it from here? Let's see if that works even. Okay. All right. So anyway, sorry you'll have to look over there, but here we go.
Hi, everyone. So I'm curious how many of you here were at our charrette in the fall. So a pretty good number. So, and thank you so much for coming back to the final event. What we're showing you here today is a direct result of what was talked about and what we did during the charrette. So these are really your ideas. The students did a whole lot of work on it, but this directly came out of the community and the folks who are participating in our charrette. And so we had roughly 70 people who attended in the fall, and we had a wide representation of different demographics, and we did that on purpose to get different perspectives and different ideas. And of our participants, the age of our participants range from 22 to 82 years old. We had people who had been living in Los Angeles from 1 to 82 years and everything in between. We had a diverse racial and ethnic representation of different communities. And we had people who lived in neighborhoods and cities from Sherman Oaks to Carson to Montebello, and many more in between. And so, we really tried to get a wide representation, not just demographically, but also geographically. And so in the first part of our charrette in the morning, we really focused our discussion, and the students all facilitated these discussions around the age-friendly domains. And in Los Angeles, we have 9 age-friendly domains. And some of the ideas that came out of the discussion, there were a couple of main themes. And so one is that as people were talking about these domains, people started talking about how all of these domains, even though they are meant to be age-friendly, and that's how they are couched, it really applies across all ages. And one participant said there should be more public spaces for youth, for seniors, for adults to enjoy, ones that are user-friendly and inviting. And so while outdoor spaces may be a domain, an age-friendly domain, it's really not something that's just isolated for older adults, right? Having good outdoor spaces is good for all ages. Folks talked about how many of the domains are interrelated and how some of the issues that may affect particular populations may affect these domains differently, but across the board. So one participant said, for all domains, it is important to consider the needs of the LGBT older adult community with issues such as low income, higher rates of isolation, and no biological family to depend on for support. So these different things, these different issues may not affect just transportation, but also housing, emergency preparedness, social isolation. And so it's broad across all domains. And then when we started to talk about some products or maybe some solutions, folks were not shy about technology as a tool, right? And particularly with the focus of older adults. One participant said, parks, schools, and libraries should be more similar to internet cafes with instructional classes for seniors on using computers and other technologies. And so in the morning we talked about domains, in the evening or in the afternoon we moved to talking about sort of within spas or service planning areas. And some of you may be very familiar with what a spa is, but for those who don't, a service planning area is a defined geographical area in Los Angeles that the county uses in order to target services for health services and public health services. And when we broke up into these groups, into these spa groups to talk about these domains, we started with this discussion and talked about challenges and best practices within these specific geographical areas. And in evaluating the domains within these geographical areas, we really got a sense that geography matters and that demographics matter, because where transportation may be really great in one community for older adults, it may not be so great in another community. And so when we talk about these domains and we want to talk about challenges and best practices, we have to consider geography. And so for the purposes of this study, we really needed to define some specific geographic areas to target our study of these age-friendly domains. And that's where we came up with this idea, or the group came up with this idea of lifespan improvement districts. And so I'm going to have Dee come up. Dee is one of our students, and this is Dee Villanueva. And Dee recently graduated from the Masters of Arts program in gerontology in December of 2017. So she's a new grad, possibly looking for a job, so, her passions include advocacy, public policy, research, and connecting older adults to services that help better their lives. And so Dee will go into a little bit more detail about our LIDs.
Hello. All right, hi everybody. So thank you all for coming to our event. So throughout our semester, like you heard the professors, all of our groups worked and learned from each other, as well as from our communities. We all looked at, our class came up with 5 LIDs and called short for Lifespan Improvement Districts. So a Lifespan Improvement District is a designated geographical area in which 8 or more domains of age-friendliness are considered with the purpose of assessing and addressing the livability needs of people as they age across the lifespan. So here are 5 LIDs. Kadehe, Hussein, and myself, and Chris and Mary were spatial science students. So that made up that group. Glendale, Ahmad, Amber, Valeria, and Reed made up that group. Little Tokyo, we have Carlos, Jessica, Catherine, and Alan. Well, that's our Kadehe Southeast LID, and those are our group members. And Glendale group members. Then we have Little Tokyo, and their group members. And last we have Vista West, and we have Samia, Jennifer, Heidi, Corinne, Rita, and Monica. And then we have our USC neighborhood. That's Samia, Jennifer, Cole, and Nathaniel. And in a short while, you'll be able to visit with each of the groups and to view and interact each other apps that they made. So thank you everybody for coming.
All right. I'd like to introduce Laura Trejo. As I said earlier, she's a faithful Trojan. We're so pleased to have her here. She's the general manager for the Department of Aging, City of Los Angeles. She works closely with Cynthia Banks from the county area agency on aging, and she is going to tell us about what's been happening in the city's Purposeful Aging Initiative. And then a little bit later, she's going to interview 3 of our students about their experience. So Laura, come on up, and we're so pleased to have you. Thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here. I'm already so excited just seeing the slides that have been presented because of the regions that you were looking at. As all of you might have heard, in 2016, the City of Los Angeles, along with our colleagues in the county, declared the entire Los Angeles County region an age-friendly city, participating as part of over 200 communities across the world with the World Health Organization Age-Friendly Cities Project. We're very proud because it took 22 elected officials to get us here today. Part of the process of World Health is very complicated, and it rightfully is. They want really the commitment from all levels, but more important, they want top leadership to embrace the work of the initiative. So we're very excited that when I made my presentation to Mayor Eric Garcetti, the only challenge he gave me, which I thought was incredibly reasonable of him, as always, he said, bring the county with us. And at that moment I went, oh my God. But the good news is I work with Cynthia Banks, who is the director of the Department of Workforce Development, Aging, and Community Services. And she and I really work very, very closely together and have for many years. So I went to Cynthia and I said, Cynthia, I have a project for you. What if we bring the county with us? And she never said no. She just said, let me think, how would that work? And we started from there. It was about a 2-year process. And luckily, we were able to bring everybody on board, including the Los Angeles City Council. So we were very, very lucky that we have very supportive public officials in Los Angeles that want to do the right thing by older adults in our community. Since 2016, we've been hard at work building infrastructure to actually develop the initiative. So we've developed many, many working groups that are internal to the city and the county. For example, part of the impact of putting this in play was that the county chose that all county departments would have to have strategic goals associated with this initiative because they made it part of the county's strategic plan. The city works a little bit different. The mayor issued an executive directive, and he basically listed 13 city departments to work with me as sort of a down payment on the initiative with some very aggressive deliverables that had to take place. So this initiative has already been sort of rolling up in terms of its work, even though we have not submitted an official report to anybody about recommendations yet. But it was in anticipation that we wanted to start getting everybody sort of working together, that all of this effort has taken place. So we have been involved probably over the last year, mostly around a needs assessment. Assessing is a very important part of this initiative. It's really the first 2 years. It's a 5-year initiative. And we have just completed all of the data cleanup, and all the researchers will appreciate how difficult that is, on surveys that went on for about 20 pages. And it's all in the hands of our very, very capable social scientists right now. And they're actually going through over 12,000 surveys in 11 different languages right now. That was the first time Los Angeles did that, where it was available in all the threshold languages available in our community. And we felt that was critical if it had to have meaning to us about giving everybody a voice into the process. Our next phase is that we will take summary findings, preliminary findings, and we're going to hold 9 different focus groups in the community around each of the livability domains. Those are coming up at the end of February, where we will be asking folks to come and share with us recommendations similar to what the seniors and other community members you interviewed told you. We want to generate some of those observations as well, those recommendations, so we can generate an action plan, because that's our commitment that by the end of June, we are submitting a 3-year action plan of recommendations to the board, the mayor, and the city council. So those will be going in. Then we move forward into how that will roll out in the implementation phase. But a lot of the work that we're trying to do, and that's why I'm so grateful to Dr. Cicero and all of the partners that worked in this practicum, because you're really helping to give some information to us to be able to enact some of those priority areas. I can tell you I have a colleague here, Viviana Criado. Where are you, Viviana? Raise your hand. There she is. From the Department of Public Health, and I invited her specifically today because we're sitting in a working group talking specifically about what you're doing, which is how do we target communities. And they said, I think they've already done most of your legwork, so we might want to use some of that work because we want to be able to integrate it as quickly as possible. So very grateful for the vision that this group has had in helping to bring this to the forefront, to have these very unique perspectives sort of come together to help us think about how do we use data and how do we present information, and therefore how can we implement innovations in our community. So thank you very much for doing that, very grateful. Our hope is that, and I was just sharing with somebody, that as a result of all this work, not only is it our goal to improve the quality of life for older people in our community, but we agreed with the comment. A community that works for older people works for all ages. And so we really do believe that this is a lifespan approach to how we want to live in Los Angeles. Even though our priority is older adults, we always keep in mind that whatever we're doing has also ramifications for other age groups, and that we do not want to sacrifice one for the other, but we want it to be an equal and equitable distribution of resources and opportunities so that everybody can live well. One of the chores for this year for me, for tasks, is that I am now convening the other 87 cities. Mayor doesn't like being alone in anything he does. So he said, you know, we really need to bring the other mayors along, because that way we begin to also help those other cities to position for how the aging of the population will affect their citizens. And I can tell you to date, I've been visiting with a lot of mayors over the last year, and I haven't had a single mayor turn me down. They're all very excited about the possibility. They're aware of the demographic shifts in their communities, but they really are at a loss, especially in the very small cities, about how they alone would engage and embrace that. So they've always kind of just moved to the next issue. And so part of my goal is to be able to bring the synergies of the different resources that are available to the city, the county, and bring it together with the other community members, other leaders, and begin to really attempt to do problem solving at the really neighborhood level, which is where people actually live and where we want to make the most change. So, you know, I think that this has a lot of possibilities. I'm looking forward to hopefully working with all of you. If there are students, I can tell you there's city and county departments that are right now getting very educated about why you would make great interns. So if you're interested, let your internship coordinator at gerontology know, because right now they're very excited about the possibility of having gerontology students. I know Dr. Pynus helped me last year recruit a student for the Department of Housing, and they can't stop going on about how fabulous it was to have somebody who actually understood the area and what a tremendous value it was for them. So we're thrilled to have beginning to educate them that internships are also opportunities, and learning is also for us. We have to learn as managers and policymakers ourselves. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. I'm so looking forward to the outcomes and to seeing how we give legs to all this wonderful work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. In a few minutes, Laura's going to interview 3 of our students, but first I'd like to introduce Dr. Jennifer Swift from the Dormsdijk Spatial Sciences Institute, and she will tell you about some of the other aspects of our project.
Hi, it's my great honor to be here. Thank you very much for coming. We have a tremendous number of wonderful apps to show you guys shortly. All the students will be at the tables to show you what they created. from the project. But we also wanted to note that while we were creating these applications based on everything that we learned from the charrette and throughout the semester, we were thinking about and listening to everything that was happening with Harvey and Irma and the terrible situations that older adults were falling under, and we thought about earthquakes, and we thought, well, we should have an earthquake preparedness and response application that has data that's particularly relevant to older adults. So we did have some students work on this project, Brian Everett, Zizi Wang, and Rui Zhang. And with this application, it works on a laptop or a mobile phone, and it contains earthquake data and all kinds of emergency response services, and also it's volunteer geographic information where people can search for services, and also a call for help. There is a live interaction with the database behind the scenes where people can click on one of the, you can't see them very well, but one of those little icons and submit a ticket asking for food or clothing or shelter or evacuation. And so there's quite a lot of detail in that application. But one of the most important things that we learned, all of us, the faculty and the students, was how to have this interdisciplinary collaboration. So we really wanted to share with you some of the highlights of that. With these collaborations, they start at the top. We had the support of the provost, the chairs, the deans, and without them, none of this even would have gotten started. So that's where it starts. And then it's all about the students. Students chose this project. They chose to take special topics classes that were created specifically for this project. Brand new syllabi were written, and with the online students who worked on the web part. Let's see. Okay. I want to show you a picture of some of our students. Is it going forward? Okay, there. In the back, and some of the faculty, they were all online and stay remote and living in other places. So this was in particular challenging. And they chose the project even though they had opportunities to do many, many different projects. So that was, I think, one of the key components. So another great part of this collaboration was the meeting spaces and the technology that enabled us. So we had a wonderful collaborative classroom where, with big tables where everybody could move around, and lots of screens and a big screen. And we also used other technology for online meetings. In particular, we made great use of BlueJeans, which is wonderful. You can kind of see there off on the left where the people who are meeting online can see us through the camera, and then there's a presentation in the middle, and that worked wonderfully. We also used, as you saw when you came in, some new 3D interactive software where we could all intermingle as avatars, and that was great fun. We created breakout rooms, first for the 9 domains, and then that was way too many. So then we moved back to, we created 5 lit breakout rooms, and then we would meet in there. And we had excellent support from USC and SSI in the use of laptops and software that allowed them to gather all this data, map this data, and make sense of all of the field work and everything they were doing. And believe it or not, the Blackboard organization, which is like an internal Facebook, was really, really a big key, because what that allowed the students was, even though we were in completely separate schools, we could all use one internal website to put all our materials and for all our meetings, for the discussion boards and blogs and stuff. There was only one for 4 separate classes, and that made the interdisciplinary part really possible. But it was the student power that enabled this collaboration. They shared their visions, online meetings and face-to-face. They devised their own tasks, and they dreamed up these deliverables that you're going to see today. And they attended continuously scheduled meetings for points, and then they voluntarily met every single week sometimes. This with the remote students, the distant students, and all getting together in these different virtual environments. So it was really amazing. I've never worked on a project like this that had so many diverse students. So another thing to note is with each of these 5 groups, there's students from each discipline. There was quite a lot of cross pollination there. So with that, I'd like to move the next part of our agenda, and I'd like to introduce some students who will talk with Laura right now. First, I'd like to introduce Corinne Jones. She comes. Corinne is a USC Ed and Rita Bolesky Scholar who will graduate in May with a master's degree in gerontology. Woohoo! And her career area of focus will be ending elderly homelessness and improving the lives of older adults through work in advocacy and public policy. Next, I'd like to introduce Ahmad Walid Nijar. Ahmad is an Afghan Fulbright Scholar pursuing a master's degree in international public policy and management at USC. His research areas are focused on private sector development, international trade, poverty alleviation, good governance, and income equality. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Jessica Soto. She's a dual degree major, Master of Social Work and Master of Public Health student here at USC, and her goal is to combine her passion from social work and public health to serve low-income communities to obtain better health care access.
Awesome. Well, my first question to all of you, because I read your bios, I'm very impressed with the diversity of your goals and interests. So, Corinne, for example, you cited elderly homelessness. Tell me what about that interests you and what do you want to do with that?
One of the troubling things in our great society today, especially here in Los Angeles, as we know, is that homelessness is just growing.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine, if you can, with me, that you're older, you're an older adult, your bones are frail. You have the same issues as an older adult, whether you're on the street, as you would have if you were housed. And so that troubles me. In this great society that we live in, there has to be a way made so that those folks, especially our older adults, don't sleep on the streets at night.
Awesome. Just for the audience, Los Angeles just had the homeless council. Last year, 2 years ago, 1/3 of all unsheltered adults over the age of 55 were residents of the city of Los Angeles. That's already staggering when you think that 1/3 of the people on the streets that year were. Last year, it grew by 17%. It's considered also one of the fastest growing segments of the homeless population. So we are waiting for you to graduate, okay? Thank you. Ahmad, you talked about, I saw your interest in poverty, income inequality, and issues related to good governance. Tell me, what do you want to do with that?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I was born and brought up in Afghanistan, so we all know Afghanistan is a country where it has faced decades, or I can say centuries of wars, distraction, instability there. So I could experience poverty, inequality all across Afghanistan throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
So that encouraged me, that attracted me to pursue a career in that area, where the government is lagging in its infrastructure, both the human infrastructure and physical infrastructure there, to address these challenges. But as I proceeded with studying these topics, I realized that this is not a context-specific issue. This is a universal issue. I went to United Kingdom to study, I came to the United States, I traveled to many other countries. I could see that poverty, inequality, lagging governance issues are everywhere. So that's why I'm very much passionate about studying this topic and dedicate my career in these areas.
The world needs you.
Thank you.
Jessica, one of the things that was very interesting to me is that as I told you earlier, that you combine the mind and the body in your interests because you have a dual degree in social work and public health, which is very unusual. Tell me how you want to influence healthcare.
I think one of the biggest things now is with all the changes going on in healthcare, I just want to be able to provide the community access. Growing up in a low-income community, it was very hard to know what services are available for the community. And aging, we're getting older, so we want to help older adults make that access easier. So I just want to work with them, tell them what's available, and also mental health is very important. Health and mental health are a great combination. You can't have one without the other. So just making sure that the person's taken care of as a whole to live a better life.
Awesome. Well, we need you two very much. I have a couple of kind of structured questions, but they're going to decide who goes first. So my first question to all of you is, what was the most surprising thing that you found when you went into the field? That you thought, wow, I never thought about that way or in this, at all. What was that? You want to go first? Go.
So when we started this wicked problem, we knew that there is a critical issue because not only in the United States, not only in Los Angeles, it's a universal issue in East Asia, South Asia, and Middle East, in Europe, the aging population. But then we started reading some reports, but once we went to the site, we interviewed some of the people, older population, we found that there were so many wickedness there that the government has not been successful as of yet in order to address these challenges. And the more they delay these challenges, the more critical those problems will get. For example, there was no single issue, there were multiple issues. Like they were saying, go Glendale City, if we see from the economic perspective, from so many other perspectives, it's doing quite well. But when we interviewed the people, they were like complaining about the rising house prices, ageism in the work area, unemployment rate, the lack of access to transportation system, lack of access to health, their social environment. Also, like one of the critical challenges that they were addressing was the built-in environment that they are living, the pedestrian accidents issue. So there are like so many multiple challenges that we could not find any data on it, or we could see that the government is somehow overlooking them. But these issues are now becoming more severe challenge because the age population in Los Angeles County is growing, and it's expected by 2030 to be 2.1 million aged people. So we found that this is a very critical area that should be more strictly, that should be addressed very soon.
I think one of the things that was most shocking to us when we went to see the community is that you can read about the community, but you won't know until you actually see. We went in there thinking, we did Little Tokyo. As you know, Little Tokyo is very small, but it's growing. Like next to you have Arts District, so you have a community that's growing, older adults that access services. There's great organizations there, but you wouldn't know if you don't live in the community. So one of the things that we looked at was how do they access these services? Do they know about them? And what can we do to just better that communication between them? We also looked at walkability to see how they get around. So that was very surprising.
And speaking of walkability, one of the things that we found interestingly is that sidewalks are great barriers to older people. They can be flat and not be wide enough to accommodate a wheelchair or a walker. But in Los Angeles, Culver City, some other areas in particular, because of the kind of trees that were planted, the sidewalks are just totally disrupted. And it's dangerous to anyone. It's especially dangerous when you not have a steady gait or you're in a wheelchair. We went to, our group went to Ladera, and we were thinking, well, they have great sidewalks, and they do. They're wide, they're beautiful, but it's also a very hilly area. And so if you're in a wheelchair and you want to travel by yourself, you have to be very careful coming down because it's very easy for the wheelchair to get away from you. And just looking at it, you think, oh, it's great. Look, they have really great sidewalks. However, you have to be very careful, again, coming down.
Barrier is a barrier is a barrier.
Very, very.
Awesome. Thank you. Tell me what experience, one thing that you want to know more about or want to make sure that you advocate for after this experience in the practice. something you think, you know what, I'm sure I want to do that.
I think that we must listen to the older adults. We thought when we went out to the area that we went to, Vista West, that we knew exactly what we were going to find. We were going to find a food desert. We were going to find Biona Creek as an area with great, outside spaces and what have you. But when we interviewed and talked with the older adults that lived in those areas, we found out some things were as great as we thought they were, and some things were not quite. So I think my greatest takeaway is that we must, as a gerontologist, I must listen to the people that I want to serve, and listen with the intent of doing something relative to what they've told me, not just what I have.
I think one of the biggest things I got from this was the importance of collaboration. It's not just one service is going to fix all. It's making sure that there's communication between each service that's being provided, so that we can, better help the adults.
Excellent.
I would like to discuss it from the policy perspective. I realized that, for example, when we were doing research on the city of Glendale, on the issue of pedestrian accidents there, we realized that there are so many short-term policy actions being taken there, and also there were more like educational programs rather than addressing the actual challenges of the infrastructure issues there. So what I would be interested in is to provide long-term policy solutions, not only for the older adults at the present, but also we could realize that there are people who are in their mid-40s who have so much, who are complaining about what would happen to their future when they become like 65 plus. So there should be long-term policy solutions than short-term policy actions that is currently being practiced.
Awesome. Last question. So you all heard I work for Mayor Garcetti. This is your shot. What do you want me to tell them? What advice you want to give them about how to do age-friendly right?
So the first advice would be, this issue is very serious. By 2030, as I discussed, there will be 2.1 million older adults in the county of Los Angeles. So on the first issue, there should be like long-term policy solutions and actions. Secondly, there should be more investment on data, because when we were doing this practicum, we saw that there is hardly data or any survey, any reports on the older population, their challenges, because when we went and interviewed them, they have like hundreds of challenges which are not discussed on the reports by the government. And third, all these policy solutions should also address the current population who are in their early 50s or mid 40s, so that they could take their recommended solutions into consideration, so that by the time they become age population, they would not face the challenges that the current population is facing.
Corinne?
I'd like to say to him, if I were, and through you, there are many, many different solutions to homelessness and how to end it. It is not a one-size-fits-all. So if we're going to end older adult homelessness, we may want to look at it in a different way. Their needs are a little bit different than someone who may have mental illness, or someone who's out because they've been evicted and they have children. And I would just encourage him to let's look at it on an entity basis. Let's take a look at it at what would work for one group but may not work for another, and then let's go about getting it done.
I think just investing more time in having community workers reach out to the community, what that specific community needs. Every community needs something different. So if we're going to work on homelessness or mental health, providing more services specific to that population.
Excellent. I'm so excited about the future of the professions. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and I have a lot of advice to go give now. And I really thank you for the opportunity to get to know you tonight. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you to Laura and the three of you. So now we would love for you to visit the tables behind you, and you can check out the apps. We worked very hard on technology, and we set up for you to be able to look at our apps and websites on laptops. So the students, they're labeled. You can see if you're interested in Culver City, Ladera, Mar Vista area. You go there to Vista West. Glendale is right here. Little Tokyo, Cudahy, the USC neighborhood. And Jennifer has the emergency response app over here. So please visit and talk to the students about the projects they did. Thank you so much.
Of all of the students, that's much, there's more out there. But this is all of, you got one of those?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can go and, so I would call, so how? Right.
Or the seed that's been planted that started to sprout, but if you don't sort of water it or whatever, nothing will happen to something, you know, right?
Yeah, so this really is your seed. You know, these are in fact final projects, but I think what you're hopefully getting from us is that there's an invigorated next group.
Not,
You know, those are my
it was
colleagues that
mainly
are on
who we
stage.
were able to.
Everyone's looking to involve themselves.
And you can see from here, there's no traffic signal in the crosswalk. And there are some places there's no medians in the street, so the drivers are making improper turns at the business street.
So as Amber said, when we analyzed most of the government's policies, they are geared towards it.
Where they can see this information that we're collecting on our map.
I have a question. Is the intention for like a caregiver to use this information and then hand it down to a senior? Because I also don't see a lot of seniors necessarily jumping online and doing the research prior, or even having an iPhone or a smartphone. So how did you intend for this to work? Did you have a specific target population in mind? I think caregivers and organizations that work with the seniors, because like when we did the field visit, we were able to see that not a lot of seniors are engaging with technology or they don't know how. So it would be to the caregivers.
And anyone.
I was saying that.
It was when you guys were separate.
And this is Metro LA. And USC.
Yeah, okay.
It's pretty close by.
Yeah.
It's like 15
We
minutes
actually had an
drive.
interview on the women's patio outside. She was really nice. But the older houses is kind of like
Like my grandparents,
So could we download this app? No, unfortunately you can't download it because it's just a wireframing. So wireframing is kind of like an Outlook, like a mock application.
Also, we use this. Just got the
So
maybe the university can provide the same way that it provides for the students, maybe for older adults.
That would be fantastic.
And Lyft is a really senior conscious
They
company.
are.
Right. So they have a person, Daniel Trigev is his name, and he talks about the topic a lot. And there are lots of